We've recently started experiencing some shift problems on this Mercedes SL55, and this video is going to be all about the 722.6 gearbox or transmission that's found on this car and many other Mercedes ranging from 1996 all the way up to 2018. I'm going to be changing the conductor plate on this car, and this video is primarily going to be about what that conductor plate controls, how it controls it, and what kind of error codes it may throw up. So if your car is stuck in limp mode or is not changing smoothly, harsh gear changes, anything like that, you might be interested to watch this video. The gearbox in our SL55 R230, which is a Mercedes 722.6 gearbox, has started to have a few shifting problems. So we've ordered this transmission kit to try and solve that problem. Now what we've done is ordered the Febby 100-254 kit, which comes with the conductor plate. They also do a 100-253 kit, which is just the filter and the gaskets, etc. I'm just very quickly going to run over what's in this kit. The transmission pan bolts, it's always a good idea to replace them. You also have the crush washer for the sump plug, which is in there too. Here you have a new plastic tab here. Now in the previous video I showed you how you had to break that tab and push it down to get the transmission oil gear stick cover off, so they send you a new one in this kit. They also send you some solenoid screens, and when you take the magnets or the solenoids out of here at the bottom there, in 4 of them you'll see little screens which you can replace with that. Now, one of the common problems with that gearbox is that this component here fails, which is the electrical plug. This comes with 2 new O-rings here and the complete plug just in case you break yours when getting it off. Obviously you've got the filter, you've got the gasket. The gasket looks to be made out of quite hard rubber, which is normally not a good sign, but hopefully that'll be okay. An info booklet which comes with the kit explains how to get this pass-through connector off. It's held on by a 7mm bolt, so you'll need to get a socket, extension socket down there to undo that. Once you've released the electrical plug by turning that anti-clockwise, this bit will just pull out. Don't twist it out, otherwise you'll risk damaging the electrical contacts. This is the conductor plate here. It just clips onto the valve body. And this is normally what goes wrong. Either you have the O-rings failing here, and what happens is you get tiny microscopic metal particles in the oil, shorting out those connections, and your gear changes start to become erratic, and you can normally see that oil leaking from the plug. When you take your conductor plate off on a later car, you may find that there are plastic covers here, and those plastic covers were designed to stop those microscopic metal particles getting onto these electrical contacts here. You also get corrosion here. The solenoids are a push fit in here, and you get corrosion on these connections here. You can also, when you take this to pieces, if your solenoids are loose, it could be a sign that the actual O-rings on the solenoids are starting to fail and the oil is leaking down the side, and that will cause transmission judder and all sorts of other potential problems. This here is the speed sensor. That's a very common cause of failure. This here is the N2 speed sensor, and this is the N3 speed sensor. Now, the N2 speed sensor records the speed of the front sun gear. This N3 sensor records the speed of the front planetary gear, and both are in use when you're in 2nd, 3rd or 4th gear. And N3 is not reported in 1st and 5th gear, and N2 is not reported in 2nd gear. And if you have an input speed sensors mismatch error, when you're looking at error codes, it's because these two are not the same on 2nd, 3rd and 4th gear. These are Hall effect sensors here, and they have 6 volts going to them. Now, I don't want to get too technical in this video, but an automatic gearbox, in order to change gears at the correct time, the car's computer needs to know how fast the car is going and also how fast the engine shaft is rotating and how fast the gearbox is rotating. And in order to know how fast the car is rotating, the computer actually uses information from the ABS module. So each wheel has a speed sensor on it, and if any of those speed sensors are faulty or the ABS module is faulty, your car can also go into limp mode and have problems shifting. So it's important to check those ABS codes and to be aware that the The TCM, the transmission control module, also takes information from the ABS modules and the wheel speed sensors. Certain diagnostic trouble codes will cause your car to go into limp mode, and if you're driving along and your car experiences an electrical problem with the transmission, you'll be stuck in that gear and until either the engine is turned off or you've turned the engine off 10 seconds and have restarted the engine. And on a Mercedes, limp mode is generally second gear. Reverse gear is always available, whichever type of car you have. On some cars, it's third gear is the only gear that's available, and that limp mode will remain active until either the key is recycled. So with some diagnostic trouble codes, you can merely turn the car off, turn it back on again, and you'll be out of limp code. But with other diagnostic codes, you need to actually log into the diagnostics and clear those DTCs or diagnostic trouble codes before the car will get out of limp mode. So for example, if you've had a problem, you've changed your conductor plate and the car's still in limp mode, make sure you log into diagnostics and actually clear those codes first. Here is a oil level sensor or float level sensor that can fail and give you a light on the dashboard saying you're low on transmission oil. On the back here you have the thermistor, which senses the temperature of the oil. Now, it's important when you're either changing oil or looking at oil temperature that you realize that this switch here is telling the transmission control module when you come out of park or whether you're in neutral, and it basically switches over from displaying the engine temperature to the transmission oil temperature. So when you first log into your diagnostic screen and you see what the temperature is and you're in park or neutral, it's telling you what the engine temperature is, not what the transmission oil temperature is. It's not until you put the car in gear or reverse and that switch is depressed that this becomes activated and measures the engine transmission oil temperature. Solenoids or electromagnets which plug into this conductor plate are all responsible for slightly different things. This one here is the second to third shift solenoid, this is the third to fourth shift solenoid, and this is the first to second shift solenoid, and also the fourth to fifth shift solenoid. These three solenoids are all the same and they have the same partner shown on the screen below, and they are interchangeable, although I would not recommend necessarily changing them. And each one of these solenoids has two rubber O-rings, and ideally you should change these O-rings on these solenoids, especially if the solenoids are loose in that slot. This here is the shift pressure control solenoid, and this here is the modulated control pressure solenoid, also called the line pressure solenoid. These two solenoids here have no O-rings. They're just relying on the machine surfaces of the solenoid and the upper valve body to seal the oil pressure. In the kit that you get, these little flat screens here are for the two solenoids in here. Now this solenoid is different from all the other solenoids. It's called the lockup solenoid, or sometimes referred to as the torque converter clutch solenoid. It has just one O-ring and is held in there with the machine surfaces and the pressure of the valve body plate. You'll often find that it's harder to get that solenoid out than any of the others. In the kit here you have two of these taller screens, and one of those taller screens I believe is for that solenoid there. For the 722.6 transmission, of other transmissions for that matter, to operate smoothly, you need the correct amount of transmission oil in the gearbox. If you have too little oil, what happens is you have air introduced into the system, and that air has the effect of reducing the pressure, and therefore some of these solenoids are not activating the valves at the correct moment, and therefore you might start to get hard gear shifts or no gear shifts at all, or you may just get this situation where you're stuck in neutral. Now I believe that's the problem with our car. Actually, we just didn't have enough transmission oil in there, and that's what was causing all the gear problems. If you put too much oil in your transmission, you end up with exactly the same problem. The oil rises above a certain level in the transmission, hits the moving parts, and becomes aerated, and that aerated oil introduces air into the system, reduces pressure, and too much oil in the system will also potentially cause oil to, as it heats up, to come out of the oil dipstick tube or the overflow tube, and you may think you've got an oil leak when in actual fact you've just got too much transmission oil in the gearbox. One of the things that's slightly counterintuitive and catches many people out is that the transmission oil dipstick has a very wide margin on it for oil at 25 degrees and at 80 degrees. And the reason that that oil expands so much up that dipstick when it's hot is because of the internal design of the gearbox. The transmission pan itself doesn't have that much transmission oil in it. It's not like the Pagoda, for example. When you take the transmission pan off an old Mercedes, you'll see that the dipstick's actually poked into the transmission pan at the bottom of it. But this gearbox doesn't work like that. The design of the gearbox is such that you have a rounded surface with high sides, and if you imagine filling a bottle of water with a slim neck at the same flow rate, the bottle of water fills at a steady rate until it gets to the neck, and then the rate or the height of that water rises very rapidly. And that's the same on this gearbox. The dipstick oil level rises very rapidly as you get up to the 80 and beyond mark, and that's why it's very important to measure the oil temperature when you're refilling the transmission to make sure you get the correct level. Move on and tell you where to get these conductor plates and various screens, etc. The cheapest places to get them both in Europe and the USA. If you are unlucky enough to break down, this vehicle with a 72.6 gearbox should be towed flat, i.e. not at an angle, it should be towed flat in the neutral position, and for a maximum towing range of about 32 miles or 50 kilometers if you want to avoid damaging the gearbox. You can get these conductor plates from a variety of sources. It's more difficult to get them separately. They normally come as part of a kit, and even if you don't necessarily think you need a new conductor plate, the kits are not that expensive, and my advice would be to fit one anyway as a preemptive measure. Now, the thing is about these conductor kits, as I say, this came from Febi. You can see this is normally where the Mercedes logo would be here, and it's actually been ground away. So I suspect that this is actually the same plate as Mercedes would use. It's just that you can't see the logo because it's been ground off. I'm just going to finish this video here and show you where the cheapest place to buy good quality parts is. Wherever possible, we do try and buy genuine Mercedes parts, but sometimes Mercedes parts are actually made by other manufacturers, and in certain cases it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. So just spend a few minutes watching the end of this video to see how you could save hundreds of pounds on this kit, for example. I mentioned that the transmission kit that we got was a Febi Bilstein kit. And if you've got a moment, head over to the bilsteingroup.com, the parts finder section of their site, and you'll be able to see exactly what parts they do for your car. So for example, we're looking at a Mercedes-Benz SL55 AMG, just the transmission section here. And a good thing about this website is you can just focus in on exactly what it is you need. And you will find that they list practically all the bits that you're going to need for the transmission. For example, here the locking caps, the little screens that you need for the solenoids, the gaskets, the bolts. Now, these guys do not deal directly with the public, but once you've got the Febi part number here, you can just copy and paste that part number there, pop that into eBay, and you will find that you can get these parts substantially cheaper doing it that way than going through a variety of other wholesalers. The case in point is this Febi kit here. So if you copy 100-254, pop over to eBay and put Febi 100-254 in here, what you will see is a whole host of people selling that kit. Now, I always sort it by the highest price first and then scroll down, and the cheapest I found was a company that we've used many times before, Parts in Motion. At the time that we bought it, they had a 15% offer on. So instead of paying £206, I think we ended up paying £175, which I haven't seen that kit cheaper anywhere else. Now, if you happen to live in sunny America, a popular place to get Mercedes parts is these guys here, FCP Europe, and you can see they sell the transmission kit here for the 72.6, $223 with free postage. And also they offer a lifetime guarantee on their parts, which is nice. It is worth noting though that this kit here does not come with the little strainers for the solenoids and does not come with a new set of pan gasket bolts. It is all also worth noting, if you scroll down here, you can see that some of the parts in this kit are actually from Febi Bilstein, and the gaskets here that come from a company called L-Ring, and they've recently merged with Klinger. So L-Ring, Klinger is a German company. Once again, it would not surprise me at all if these two guys here, Febi Bilstein, which is also another German company, and L-Ring Klinger, both got their gaskets and parts from the same factory. Now, if you have a Mercedes, or any other car for that matter, check out these guys here, Euro Parts, or apaindustries.com. Just change the drop-down menu here to Mercedes. We're looking at the SL55 AMG, but you could also put the 500 SL in there. And you will see that they have a plethora of parts here. Pulleys, idler pulleys. If you've got a rusty transmission pan, you can get that from them here. If you need the dipstick, you can get that from them. The wire harness connector, which often leaks, that comes from them as well. Shift legal repair. It's worth spending a moment or two just to look through their catalogue if you've got a Mercedes, because you will kick yourself after you've paid hundreds of pounds elsewhere when you see the prices that these guys offer. Now, these guys here do not supply directly to the public. If you want to buy from, you're not a garage and you want to buy, you whiz over to these guys here, Rock Auto, and you just simply copy and paste the part number in to the search engine up here. For example, I was interested to know how much that electrical connector costs, and you can see just £4 from these guys. And once again, I could be wrong, but I would suspect that these all come from pretty much the same factory. So definitely worth checking out Euro Parts or APA Industries. If you've got an old Mercedes, they sell heaps of parts for the 107, or indeed a more modern Mercedes like the SL55 or the R230. They have got huge amount of parts, and in my experience are substantially cheaper than any other companies that I've come across. In the next video, we're going to be getting this car up on axle stands, removing the cover plates, the transmission plate, changing conductor plates, and hopefully solving both our oil leak and the transmission problem that we had.